What is the worst experience you have had at a fast food restaurant? Chipotle, hands down. This wasn't really Chipotle's fault, rather an individual employee of Chipotle. This girl I was seeing, and I went to Chipotle after class. She got a burrito and I got nachos. Everything was fine until I went to wake her up the next morning, and she literally looked like she was dead. Took her to the ER, and they admitted her immediately. She ended up spending almost a week in the hospital and almost died. Turns out someone poisoned the tomatoes and caused half a dozen people to get deathly sick. Luckily, nobody died. Needless to say, I haven't been back.
That's a wild story. It's crazy how one person's mistake can have such a huge impact. Going to the ER because of food from a place you think is safe is scary. Glad she ended up okay, but I get why you'd avoid Chipotle now. It's hard to shake off something like that when it feels like a close call. Makes you think twice about where you eat.
I once dropped my order at McDonald's, and the fries went flying all over the floor, under tables, etc. A couple of little kids, around 5, both filthy, instantly started snatching them up and eating them. It then became apparent that their parents hadn't bothered to order any food for their kids, just themselves. Sad face.
That's a rough scene. It's wild how some parents can overlook their kids like that. Those kids probably thought they hit the jackpot with the fries. McDonald's messes up your order sometimes, but it's even worse when the kids have to scavenge for food. Just goes to show how different people's situations can be. You never really know what's going on behind the scenes.
I went into a Roy Rogers restaurant once. I paid for a burger and fries. I expected there would be a cook in a kitchen somewhere who would then make a burger for me to eat. But instead, I was shown a rack of stuff made a few days ago, sitting under red lamps. I took one and unwrapped it. The dried up meat patties slipped out and clonked on the counter. Clonked. I looked up at the cashier, and they just stared back at me. I put it back on its stale bun. There were other people in the restaurant. They were all eating this stuff like some kind of weird zombie Twilight Zone. How did these people not know there were other fast food joints, equally accessible off the highway, where for the same money a person will actually cook the meat right then and there and serve it to you, and include things like vegetables? I even saw one eat a French fry, which broke off like a pretzel stick in their mouth. Madness. That was the first and last time I entered a Roy Rogers. A repost from an AskReddit asking what the creepiest thing I ever experienced on a road trip was.
That's a wild experience. I've been in similar situations where a place just feels off. It's odd how some people just accept what's served to them without questioning it. Sometimes you wonder how they can't see better options out there. For me, I once saw a diner with food that looked like it had been sitting for ages, and I just turned around and left. Guess not all road trips end with a good meal.
This was more just hilarious. In high school, our homeroom would all order food from a restaurant on our school's field day. Just a fun day, where we competed for non-existent points. My homeroom chose Chipotle, and we filled out our order cards. When the burritos come, I shit you not, my burrito was a tortilla filled entirely with pico de gallo. Like a solid pound, wrapped to look like a normal burrito. It was hilarious.
That sounds pretty funny. I can imagine the confusion when you opened that burrito. It must have been a challenge to eat it since it was just all pico de gallo. I wonder what the others thought when they saw it. It's those little moments that you remember the most from school. Just a reminder that not everything goes as planned, especially when it comes to food orders.
It was more funny than anything. The only fast food restaurant I rarely go to with my wife is Burger King for the vegetarian hamburger. Once in Portland, Oregon, we order our hamburgers and we drive to the window, and the guy takes our monies and says, "Do you guys mind if I hold my nose when I bring your hamburgers? I really don't like the vegetarian hamburger smell." We had a good laugh about it after we left.
That's a solid story. It's funny how fast food places can have those quirky moments. The guy holding his nose is a unique take on serving food. It's nice to share a laugh over something simple like that. I guess it added a memorable twist to the regular drive-thru experience. Those little interactions can really make the day more enjoyable. It's the simple things that stick with you.
Late to the game, but still a really messed up story that fits in here. Let me preface this by saying my parents love White Castle, and there isn't one anywhere near my hometown. So anytime we went out of my town, that's where we would eat if we wanted a quick meal. My parents had just picked me up from a summer camp in a big city and wanted to stop for a quick dinner before going home. Of course, we went to Whitey's. We walk and order our food and are having a great time being reunited after not being together for 6 weeks. I take a bite of the onion rings we are sharing, and when I look down, there is a deep-fried Band-Aid sticking out of the onion ring. My parents remained very calm and very collected while explaining the fiasco to the manager, but he refused to do anything about our meal. So we left, and my parents turned their backs on their love for great D-meat sliders, and none of us have ever gone back to one. TLDR, deep-fried Band-Aid in my White Castle onion rings. No bueno.
That's pretty gross. I can't imagine finding a Band-Aid like that. It's nice that your parents handled it calmly. I probably would have been more upset. Guess it makes sense they stopped going back after that. Food experiences can really stick with you, good or bad. Just a reminder to be careful about where you eat. It's wild how one incident can change your whole view on a place.
Back in the day, McDonald's chicken nuggets were a lot shittier. I remember that it was a gamble whether you were going to get a little lump of gristle in your nugget, but most didn't care. One day I bit into a nugget that was rock hard. I couldn't even pull the thing in half. I just removed the skin, and the entire thing was a gray solid mass, which I assume was gristle. Although as I'm typing this, I see the top comment is about someone getting shot, so I guess my bad nugget experience isn't that bad.
I've had my share of bad fast food experiences. I remember biting into a nugget that felt like it was made of concrete. Couldn't even tear it apart. Just a weird, gray chunk inside. Not pleasant for sure. But hearing stories about crazier stuff puts it all into perspective. Fast food has its moments, good and bad, but it's just part of the experience, I guess.
I ordered a McRib, and when after a few bites, I realized it was cold. Opened it, and the meat was completely raw. I complained, and they checked it and said they would give me and my friends any meal we wanted for free. I was 15, so that was brilliant. They kept the raw McRib, and I had awful food poisoning for nearly 2 weeks. I don't agree with this sue everyone culture, but I think I would have been justified if I wasn't paid off with a few free burgers.
That's pretty rough. I mean, biting into a raw sandwich can be a serious turnoff. Getting food poisoning for 2 weeks sounds like a nightmare. It's nice that they offered free meals, but it doesn't really make up for the hassle you went through. At that age, free food feels like a win, but I can see why you'd still feel uneasy about the whole situation. Just one of those unfortunate experiences.
My friend and I went to some place. Not sure which, think the color scheme was orange and white, but I don't remember the name. Anyways, we both asked for the same thing, a plain cheeseburger, nothing special on it, just meat and cheese. Well, out they come to give us our food, and we end up getting different things somehow. I get a burger full of what appeared to be everything they could gather in the condiments closet and vegetable drawer, whereas my friend ended up with nothing but a patty and some cheese stuck to it. To be clear, my friend got no bread and just got a plastic container with a patty and some slightly melted cheese.
That sounds like a classic mix-up. You both wanted the same simple cheeseburger, and it turned into this whole thing. You ended up with a crazy concoction while your friend got the bare minimum. It's funny how things can go wrong in the simplest of orders. At least you got a good laugh out of it. Next time, maybe just double-check the orders before digging in.
I was at an Earl's on Broadway in Vancouver with my former girlfriend. We'd just been seated when an elbow-length metallic material-covered oven MIT, with baked-on crusty food bits all over it, came flying over a partition and hit me in the face, knocking my glasses off. After being pretty startled, which quickly turned to anger from this thing smoking me in the face, I picked it up and put it on my lap out of sight. Kitchen staff quickly appeared subtly and frantically looking everywhere for the MIT. They looked really puzzled that it had just disappeared. When the waitress came to take my order, I said, "I'd like to order a well-done oven MIT to the face, please." Her eyes almost popped out of her head, and she quickly went to get the manager, who brought the chef who'd flung the MIT over to the table to apologize. They both apologized profusely, and the dinner plus bottle of wine was free with a gift certificate for the next time we came in.
That's a wild story. Getting hit in the face with an oven mitt isn't something you expect at dinner. It's funny how you handled it, too, just casually making a joke. Free dinner and wine out of it seems like a win. It's nice when people step up to fix their mistakes. At least you left with a good story and a future meal to look forward to.
One time a few of my friends were going to the drive-thru at McDonald's, and as we were driving around the building, two guys ran into the store naked. They had underwear on, but it was pulled down. They got on top of tables and started dancing around. It wasn't McDonald's fault, but it was really disturbing to see that happen. We just drove away at that point because we figured the employees might need to do something about it.
That sounds like a wild experience. I can't imagine just driving up and seeing that. It's one of those moments where you think, do I really want to stick around for this? It's definitely not something you see every day. Just driving off seems like the wisest choice. Let the staff handle it. Sometimes you just want a burger without the extra excitement.
Burger King drive-thru. Worked late one night, so I decided to pick up dinner on the way home. I was starving, so as I drove off with the food, I reached in the bag, grabbed some fries, and shoved them in my mouth. Immediately, I felt a sharp pain move around my mouth so bad I started gagging and had to pull over alongside the road. Tried to vomit, but couldn't. Spit out some blood and what looked like twigs. Looked at one closely and realized it was a roach leg. So I guess grabbed an unsuspecting roach that was chilling in my fries and put it in my mouth. The thing freaked out when I bit it, so it ran straight down to my stomach. Not cool.
That's pretty rough. You think you're just getting a quick meal, and then bam, a roach leg. It's wild how something so small can ruin your night. You'd expect fast food to be safe, but stuff like this happens. Picking up your favorite meal turns into a nightmare. Hopefully, that didn't keep you from getting burgers again. Sometimes, you just gotta laugh about it later, even if it feels terrible at the moment.
Applebee's. Waited 10 minutes for no service whatsoever. Worst part about it is that they were absolutely empty, and we were sitting next to the hostess stand and had managers walk right by me and my girlfriend a few times. Being pretty pissed and hungry, we decided to leave. On the way out, the hostess gave us a super cheery, "Thanks for coming today." I couldn't help but bust out laughing.
That sounds frustrating. I've had similar experiences at places where it seemed like the staff just didn't care. You'd think being empty would mean better service. It's a bit funny, though, how cheerful they can be when you're walking out. At least you got a laugh out of it, even if it didn't end well. Sometimes, those moments stick with you more than the meal would have.
Oh my God! The McDonald's by my work had the world's dumbest night shift McDonald's cashier. Some samples of her glorious incompetence. Accidentally put 3 orders of fries in my bag. When I explained to her, she thought I meant they were cold and said she'd ask if she could give me remakes. Was in the middle of taking my order and said, "Be right back, okay?" and left. After waiting 15 minutes, I left, and as I went by the dumpsters, I saw her standing there having a smoke. She went on her break in the middle of serving me and didn't tell anyone. Like what? I don't go there anymore.
That kind of thing happens sometimes. I remember a friend who went to a fast food place and the cashier couldn't find the ketchup. Just stood there looking at the bottles for a couple minutes. It's like, how hard can it be? After that, we decided to hit up a different spot. Sometimes you just need a break from the same routine, especially when the service isn't up to par.
I worked at a Burger King in the 90s. Someone took a food waste bag out to the trash, but failed to get it into the dumpster. It sat in the sun for days, rotting. Eventually, I was asked to clean it up. By then, the bag was filled with maggots and dead mice. The stench was unbelievable. It took me about an hour, thanks to frequent vomit breaks, to shovel that putrid mess into the dumpster. When I finished, I asked to go home rather than finish my shift. My manager said no, so I quit. If I had it to do over again, I would have quit before dealing with a maggot sack.
That sounds pretty rough. Working at a fast food place comes with its own challenges, but dealing with something like that is next level. I get the decision to just walk away after that. Sometimes it's not worth it to stick around in a job when you face situations that push you over the edge. Life's too short to handle maggot bags, you know? Quitting was probably the right call.
Got a burger at Dick's, Seattle area drive-in kind of place, and bit into a burger-sized sheet of plastic wrapping. Like they hadn't bothered to unwrap an ingredient before they put my sandwich together. When I showed them, they made me a new plastic-free burger and gave me my money back, so everything was cool in the end, but that was kind of nasty.
That sounds like a pretty rough experience. Getting plastic in your food is definitely not something you want to deal with. At least they handled it well by giving you a replacement and a refund. It's good they made it right, but still, that first bite must have been surprising. Glad it ended up okay for you.
Eins, Panda Express tell mein Notice. I swear they just throw whatever they can find into that stuff because I find things in it every time I've ordered it. Once I found rubber bands like the kind you would put in your mouth for braces. Another time there was a huge ball of this hair, /grease/. I don't even know. So groß. 2. The next wasn't really the place's fault, but it was such a weird and bad experience. Me and my dad were eating in Portland, Oregon at some sandwich shop, and it was a nice day, so we were sitting outside. We're having a conversation and eating, and I'm taking like my third bite when this homeless guy comes up and asks me if I'm going to finish my meal. I have it about an inch from my face about to take another bite. Of course I'm going to finish it. He just kind of stood there, and every time we would put our sandwich down to take a drink or use a napkin, he would ask, "You going to finish that?"
I get the whole weird food experience thing. I once got takeout, and there were random things in the bag too. Like, is that a piece of plastic or something? It just makes you wonder how careful they are with the food. And yeah, I can relate to that sandwich shop story. Just trying to enjoy a meal and then someone's hovering like that. Kind of awkward, right? Just want to eat in peace.
When I was 16, I worked at a Subway. I was sick and shouldn't have been at work, but hey, no sick days. Anyways, a customer orders a steak and cheese and asks for extra cheese. Just the thought of that extra cheese was enough that I had to run to the back and throw up in a trash can. Probably not what the OP intended, but that's my worst experience at a fast food place.
That sounds rough. I've had my share of sick days missed too. I remember working at a cafe once and felt really off. I just pushed through it. But yeah, the thought of food can do that sometimes. You try to keep it together, but your body has other plans. It's kind of wild what we do for jobs, even when we're not feeling our best.
At a Waffle House, one time, I had the worst service of my life. Walked in and it took 5 minutes for the lady to come over and ask what we wanted to drink. Then she leaned in and whispered that someone was trying to sneak out without paying and she was going to investigate BRB. 10 minutes later, she asks if we are ready to order. Still hasn't brought our drinks. Eventually get our food and she notices we're out of drink. takes our glasses, and forgets to bring them back until I say something probably 10 minutes later. Worst service of my life by Miss Inspector Gadget.
I had a similar experience at a diner once. Sat down and waited way too long for someone to come. The server finally showed up, looking frazzled, and didn't even take my order right. Food came after what felt like ages, but no drinks. I mean, how hard is it to refill? I get that it's busy, but it was pretty ridiculous. Just ended up leaving feeling annoyed.
I was working at McDonald's and just finished my shift. I was outside with co-workers that were on break talking, and this guy came up to me asking my name. Now, I didn't speak English back, and so one of my co-worker translated what the guy said. So I told him my name, and he said, "I don't believe you," and pulls out a hunting knife. Right there, I'm like, WTF is going on? He tells me, "You look like the guy I'm looking for." So my co-worker said, "No, it is really his name. You got the wrong guy." So I take my wallet out while he's still pointing his knife at me and give him an ID. He looks at it, throw it back at me, and go away. So I am there, sitting on a bench still wondering what just happened and thinking that I could have gotten stabbed because someone else pissed off this guy.
That sounds pretty intense. Just finishing work and dealing with that must have been surreal. It's wild how quickly things can escalate like that. I guess having your coworkers around helped a bit, but still, being threatened over a case of mistaken identity is no joke. It's a good reminder that you never know what can happen in ordinary situations. Glad you got out of there without any issues.
My brother loved the muffins a hotel served us so much that he ate about 4 in the lobby and packed another 8 for the road. He ate them all within about 3 to 4 hours. What he wasn't aware of was that these were brand muffins. While on the road, we had to take a quick detour in the woods for a good hour while he cleared his system, and I had to go to the nearest store about 20 minutes away to get some necessities to help him during his trials. Needless to say, he has never touched another muffin again, but it's a hilarious story we always tell friends and family.
That sounds like quite the adventure. Your brother really went all out on those muffins. It's funny how something so simple can lead to such a memorable moment. Detours can be a pain, but at least you got a story to laugh about. I guess he's learned his lesson about overindulging, especially with brand muffins. It's cool that you can share that laugh with friends and family now.
I worked at a grocery store for 11 years for cashier/customer service, 7 as a manager. Overall, I enjoyed my job, but every now and then you come across people angry/upset/disappointed, and there is nothing you can do for them that will make them happy. I have been called stupid, a liar, an asshole because we didn't have their specific gluten-free diet, Dr. Oz recommended food, but I always just smiled and thanked them because I know that getting angry only fuels the fire. One main positive that comes from being on that end of the general public's rage is I am the most laid-back customer. I have had bad experiences, but overall, I never get upset with these people and usually get taken care of because I'm understanding. So thank you for being a good peasant and saying something. I'm sure the manager appreciated hearing it and made him feel better.
That's a solid perspective. Dealing with angry customers is tough. It's impressive how you managed to stay calm and didn't take it personally. I can see how those experiences shaped you into a more understanding customer. The whole cycle of being nice to get kindness back makes sense. It's good that you could appreciate the situation and send some positivity back. It's a reminder that kindness can go a long way in tough moments.
And then she went back out to her car that she was way behind in payments on and stuffed her face with fast food. She scarfed down McDouble after McDouble, desperately trying to ignore the fact that it didn't matter how long she waited. She was only going to drive back to her empty apartment and wallow in her lonely misery. At least, that's what I tell myself when customers act that way. Maybe they are just angry, miserable people, and that's not my fault.
It's tough to watch someone spiral like that. Fast food can feel like a quick fix for a deeper problem. Sometimes, people just need a moment to cope in their own way. I've seen friends go through similar situations, you know? You just try to offer support, but ultimately, they have to find their own way out. It's easy to judge, but everyone has their battles.
As a non-US resident, on the outside Applebee's sounds like a nice place, apples and bees. What could go wrong? Then again, in the UK we have a chain pub called Yates's, yes, Yates, Wine Lodge, and it sounds lovely and quaint, aside from the hideous grammatical error, but it's full of chair-throwing football thugs with bad teeth. Edit. Never mention the horrible Yates on Reddit. I get it, it's just bad English. Stop.
It's funny how places can seem nice from a distance. I remember hearing about a local diner that sounded charming, but once I went there, it was a different story. The vibe was off, and the food was forgettable. Sometimes, the appeal falls flat once you see behind the scenes. I get what you're saying about those expectations versus reality moments. It's always a risk with names that sound inviting.
My friends and I, about 6 of us, went a couple of weeks ago, and it was terrible. It was extremely packed, and our waiter was hitting on one of our friends who sat across from me. Every time he crouched down and talked to her. "How's your drink?" "I got your Long Island right here," winky face. It made me cringe for her. He gave her an order of hot wings for free, possibly the most unsexy thing to eat ever. And when she handed it down to our friend at the end of the table, the waiter came by and said, "Oh hey, those are for her," and he grabbed the wings and gave it back to my friend. We had to stifle our laughs until he was out of earshot. It also took our food about an hour to be served. But of course, I am planning on being there again tonight.
Sounds like a pretty awkward night. The waiter trying too hard definitely made things cringe-worthy, especially with the hot wings. Waiting an hour for food isn't great either. It's funny how those moments can turn into inside jokes later. I guess you never know what to expect on a night out. Hopefully, tonight goes smoother though.
A year or two ago, I went to IHOP and ordered an omelet off the menu, but without mushrooms as I'm allergic to them, which I told the waitress. The rest of our group gets their food, and I'm just sitting there waiting. About 10 minutes after everyone else got food, she brings out my omelet with mushrooms. I asked her to please have the chef remake it, as I can't eat it, again reminding her that I'm allergic. She apologizes and brings out another one with mushrooms. Again, by this point the people I'm with are all finished, so she said she'd give me one boxed up to go at no charge. I was pissed off, but whatever, free food, so I went with it. I opened the box when I got home, and it fucking had mushrooms again. I can feel all that hangry rage coming back just thinking of that story. I'll never go to IHOP again.
That's a rough experience at IHOP. It's frustrating when you clearly communicate an allergy and still get the wrong order multiple times. Sounds like the waitress just wasn't paying attention. It's one thing to wait longer, but to keep getting mushrooms on your food after saying no is a lot. I get why you'd be done with IHOP after that. Free food doesn't seem worth it if it's not safe to eat.
I worked at a Wendy's in an area with a lot of retired people, so breakfast rush was always the same grumpy old people. Lady came, ate all her food, and left, and then we got a call from corporate saying that someone found a Band-Aid in their food. No one working 3 of us had any Band-Aids on their body anywhere. And if she found it while she was eating, why didn't she say something to the store before calling corporate? Some people really do put that stuff there themselves to try and get free stuff. Obviously you didn't, but it's possible that happened several times at that location, and they were sick of getting accused of something that didn't happen.
That sounds pretty wild. Dealing with customers like that can be frustrating. It's odd that she didn't mention it right away. Makes you wonder if people are just trying to get a free meal or something. It happens more than you'd think in fast food. Guess you just have to keep your head down and do your job. Kind of part of the territory, I guess.
Once I got behind an obviously homeless guy in the checkout line of a grocery store. He had a shopping cart and grabbed one of those rotisserie chickens, all nice and warm, and nommed the whole thing down as he walked around the store. Then he actually went through the checkout line with the carcass in the cart. The checkout clerk just stared in disbelief as the gentleman said, "Oh no, I didn't bring any money."
That's a unique scene. It's interesting how some people handle their situations. You would expect there to be some kind of plan or forethought, but sometimes it's just about the moment. The clerk's reaction says a lot too, probably didn't see that coming. You can't really judge what people do when they're just trying to get by. It's a reminder that life is unpredictable.
I can't eat after other people in general. Only certain people, and only certain food, mostly finger food, if I can stand to share that person's food. Have a sip of your soda? No thanks. Ask me again after the apocalypse. It's not really personal, but I have this block against it, and it gets worse for messy eaters, and I have hatred in my heart for the open-mouthed chewers. I'm more likely to eat after my best friend, before I'd eat after almost my entire immediate family. 'Cause they nasty eaters.
I get where you're coming from. I wouldn't want to eat after most people either. Sharing food can feel off, especially with messy eaters. I've got a few friends I trust, so I'll share snacks with them, but that's about it. With family, it's a hard no most of the time. It's funny how some people's eating habits can change how you feel about food altogether.
Okay, to be fair, I went to an upscale place for lunch with my mother-in-law and 3 of her kids. There had been pizza provided, kids had gotten some, but Emile and I had been stuck in a meeting, networking thing. So we ordered, and when the food came, the siblings picked at some of the sides and played with their tablets. Looks like horrible parenting from the outside. Offered them to get something each or to split, but they weren't hungry. They also didn't go battle royale for floor food though.
Sounds like a pretty typical lunch scenario. You have this fancy place, and the kids are just glued to their tablets. It's a bit odd seeing them not interested in the food, but I guess kids have their own priorities. The whole not battling for floor food part is something, though. Shows they're not starving or anything. Just a casual day out, really.
As a former Subway employee, makes sense. The customers were always the variable. It's hard to screw with someone's food when it's prepared right in front of them. I used to have a homeless dude come in and spend hours following the Subway maps on the walls. He never really bothered anyone, so I would buy him tea or 6-inch subs, and he would just quietly stare at the wall.
That's a pretty interesting story. I get the vibe of the Subway scene. There's always someone or something unique happening. That homeless guy sounds like he found a bit of peace just staring at the maps. Helping him out with some food was a nice touch. It's little moments like that which remind us to appreciate the simple connections we can have with others, even in unexpected places.
Giving free food isn't always a bad thing. It can be a ballsy, yet successful way of generating extra income. I go to Pret a Manger some mornings to get a coffee, and sometimes a croissant or a jambon beurre. Every now and then they'll give me the coffee for free, and very occasionally the food too. I go there a lot more often than I would if there wasn't the chance of free coffee/food, and they're therefore getting more of my money than other nearby coffee shops. Whilst I get the occasional bonus, feels like one anyway, of free food/drink in the morning, smiley face.
It's interesting how that works. You think you're just getting a free drink, but it actually gets you to spend more. It's kind of a win-win if you look at it. I've had similar experiences where a place hooks you with a freebie and suddenly, you find yourself their way more often than you planned. It's all about the little perks that keep us coming back.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.